Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing Young Frankenstein. So Young Frankenstein came out in 1974 and was directed by Mel Brooks. So this film, obviously as you can probably tell from the title, is partly based on the classic novel Frankenstein, but most notably it takes a lot of elements from the classic 1931 film version of Frankenstein. So we have Gene Wilder in this film. He plays a professor called Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, or Frankenstein as he prefers to be called. He is the grandson of the famous scientist Victor Frankenstein, and he's famous for this, and lots of his students keep on reminding him about his grandfather and want to know more about his grandfather's experiments. So Frederick Frankenstein, he finds out that he has now inherited his family's estate in Transylvania. So he travels to Transylvania, where he meets this hunchback called Igor, or Igor as he prefers to be called, who's played by Marty Feldman. And they go up to the family estate and they find this housekeeper here, who's played by Cloris Leachman. We're then introduced to Teri Garr's character, who is the assistant at this estate. But really, when the film really picks up and really gets into gear, is when the characters find Victor Frankenstein's old laboratory in the back of the castle, and Gene Wilder's character, he looks through his grandfather's old books, and he finds out that his grandfather did lots of crazy experiments and was attempting to bring corpses back to life. As you can expect, this is what they try and do in this film. Dr. Frederick Frankenstein and Igor, they find a dead body in the graveyard, and they get the brain of a famous historian, and they put the brain into the dead body and they try to bring it back to life. However, things don't exactly go to plan, and this dead body turns out acting like a complete monster. And the reason was that Igor actually put a different brain into this body. So he didn't put the brain of the historian, he put an abnormal brain into the body. It ends up becoming this monster who's played by Peter Boyle. I will say that even though Mel Brooks is one of those directors that I was familiar with, this is actually the first time I've actually sat down and watched a Mel Brooks film all the way through, which is incredible given he's done so many classic horror films, other ones such as Blazing Saddles and The Producers. But this one, Young Frankenstein, this was the first one that I've ever watched, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good fun. I think Gene Wilder, absolutely superb actor. He was a very talented comedic actor, and very much similar to his performance in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Sometimes he tends to go a bit over the head and is always screaming a little bit when he talks, but his excellent presence on screen, brilliant charisma, just one of those actors who's always a pure delight to watch. Also, I have to say Marty Feldman's absolutely excellent as Igor, and here's a lot of the one-liners throughout the film. Quite a lot of the time his character tends to break the fourth wall. He'll just look off at the camera and look towards the audience, and will just deliver just a funny, witty line here and there, which is always incredible. And Teri Garr, absolutely brilliant as the assistant, and actually Cloris Leachman gives a great performance as Frau Blurker, who is the housekeeper. All in all though, overall I think everyone is superb in this film, and obviously I have to mention Peter Boyle, who plays a monster. And although Peter Boyle, his character, doesn't have a lot of dialogue throughout this film because he's this monster that just makes lots of grunting sounds, he's just superb. I can't picture anybody else being this monster, and he manages to make his character both scary and amusing at the same time, because there's some scenes when we really think he's a threat to the other characters, and then there are some scenes where you suddenly see a very different side to him, and Peter Boyle manages to pull this off fantastically well. So what makes this film so great, as well as the performances, is the fact that it's shot in black and white. So as I said, this was 1974, which was obviously a time when most films were in colour, but Mel Brooks wanted to recreate the feeling of the classic 1931 movie, Frankenstein, so they decided to shoot this in black and white, and I think it works superbly. Really gives it that feeling of those old classic Universal horror films. And it is worth mentioning that a lot of the camera techniques, a lot of the transitions with the fade-ins and fades-outs, and when they want to transition from one scene to the next, all those techniques used, they were obviously quite dated from 1974, and were techniques used in those old films, which again helps recreate that feeling of the classic horror films from way back in the day. What also helps is the fact that a lot of the lab equipment used in this film was also used in the original 1931 Frankenstein film, which just, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it just gives it that feeling of, well, I suppose authenticity might not be the correct word, but definitely a feeling of a proper classic horror film. So overall, I think Young Frankenstein is a fantastic comedy film. If you really enjoy comedy films and you like classic comedy films in particular, this is one you absolutely have to see. It's one of the funniest films ever made, in my opinion. I think all the performances are brilliant. It's just the right running time. It doesn't really drag in places, although I suppose it might take a little bit of a while to get going. But once Gene Wilder's character gets to Transylvania, that's when things turn spooky and weird, and often quite amusing at the same time. And what I do like about this film is that it's actually only a PG, which parental guidance, one of the lower certificate ratings, and really it's not a particularly rude film or particularly offensive, but it does have a lot of innuendos in it, and there are a lot of one-liners and jokes here and there which make reference to something a bit ruder, the kind of jokes that, you know, kids won't get but adults will completely understand and get. And it's those kind of jokes that really must have required a little bit of effort to get into the film, and must have actually, you know, when I think of these jokes, they are all very clever and all very well worked into the film. So overall, I really enjoyed Young Frankenstein. I'm going to give it a rating of 9 out of 10. I think it's a fantastic comedy film, definitely worth a watch, and I will definitely check out more of Mel Brooks's films in the future. I'm particularly excited to look at Blazing Saddles and The Producers, although he has also done many other works as well. But yeah, an excellent movie. So there we go. So that is my review of Young Frankenstein. So what do you guys think? Have you seen Young Frankenstein? If you have, I would love to know. So please feel free to post a comment down below. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.